All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is Mark Powls with Verity Seeker, and we have a very special guest today, Michelle Franks. And Michelle, before I get started in this, I see a middle name. How do you pronounce that? Wodtke?
Wodtke?
Wodtke? I actually did that right.
You did. It was great. Yeah.
I'm surprised. Michelle Wodtke Franks. And I'm just going to give a short bio here. And Michelle is currently Executive Director of Golden Hills Resource Conservation and Development, a community-based nonprofit committed to preserving, promoting, and protecting the unique assets of rural Western Iowa. She has worked in the nonprofit sector for more than 30 years and enjoys helping local people dream big and put those ideas into action. A native Iowan, Michelle brought her Pittsburgh-born husband back to her home state, where they have raised their two children near Hastings, Iowa. Population 110 plus the occasional roaming chicken, which I really thought was great. She is a graduate of the University of Iowa and holds a master's from the University of Cincinnati. On a summer night, you'll probably find her enjoying a glass of wine. I'm in with you there, while watching lightning bugs sparkle in the soybean fields of Iowa. Now you work for Golden Hills Resource Conservation, and before we get in and development, before we get into the topic of the day with you, can you just kind of go into what your job is at Golden Hills and what the purpose of this organization is, so we can get a background of what you're doing?
Absolutely. Yes. So I'm currently the executive director of Golden Hills, and I work with an amazing staff of 7 other people. Our organization has been in Western Iowa for 40 years. This is our 40th year of existence. And RC&Ds at one point were located all over the United States, Resource Conservation and Development Councils. They were started by the USDA in the 1967 Farm Bill. And between 1967 and through the mid-'80s, local RC&D councils were formed through financial support of USDA and the Natural Resource Conservation Service, kind of rooted in the idea that local people know best how to make decisions for their own place, certainly tied to issues of natural resource conservation, agriculture, rural development. We have a real mixed bag of things that we do. But our work is really rooted in the idea of collaboration, of making smart use of resources, both natural resources, of course, but also financial resources. Trying to braid together public and private partnerships, empowering local people to make decisions for their own rural communities. And our organization was formed really in response to the farm crisis. And I'm 54 years old, so I was a kid during the farm crisis. I saw a lot of our neighbors have to do farm sales. My dad actually had to leave the family farm and packed up his family and started a new adventure up in northern Minnesota and ran a fishing resort. So that experience of growing up in a farm life and then seeing so many families' lives altered by that experience is something that's pretty real to me. With the exception of snagging my Pittsburgh-born husband, I'm a small town girl and I love rural areas. And so my work with Golden Hills has taken us in a lot of crazy directions around rural development. We recognize that not every small town can rely on the agricultural economy anymore because that's changed. And, you don't have every town doesn't have a bank and a pharmacy and a grocery store and a co-op and all those things that were driven by farm families because it's changed. And so what we focus on are those other things that can bring life to small towns. It could be art, it could be recognizing the cultural assets, historic properties. Outdoor recreation and trails is a tremendous economic driver for a lot of small towns. And so we provide backbone support to help that happen. And we also help incubate community-based efforts that don't really have any other place to live. So, Community Heart and Soul would be one of those things where if a town wants to start reimagining their future, especially here in Western Iowa. Now, I know we're talking about Kansas, but we have the capacity to kind of help guide and direct and incubate it and then turn it back to the community again. And we've done that with a number of projects over the years. We helped incubate the Western Iowa grape growers. Western Iowa used to be the third largest grape growing area in the country. And then with some of the agricultural practices, it wiped out our grapevines. But as an organization, we've helped build that back up. We have a lot of farmers that are exploring, new things that they can grow in addition to corn and soybeans, which are king and important to our economy. But recognizing that there's other things that you can do. And so, we do a lot of grant writing. We do a lot of community meetings, a lot of facilitation with the idea that we want to give the power back to the community. And so when Community Heart and Soul came along, I was like, this kind of fits in with what we're doing. And it builds on a lot of the work that I've done, in the 30 years of working in nonprofits and advocating for rural folks, that this just seemed like a really important tool to add to my toolbox. And as I've become trained and knowledgeable about the process that has been in development for the last 10 years, it really aligns with my values and the belief that local people know what's best for them. And they have the power within themselves to visualize their future and to basically stop, fish or cut bait and do something about it. And really, become civically engaged, to have a voice and to identify, the direction that the community is going to go in the future. And, rural areas, rural towns have a long, important history with agriculture, and it continues to be really important. We were the breadbasket of the world, right?
Oh, yeah.
But the thing is, we're also seeing a lot of our small towns get older. You hear a lot about the brain drain. Young kids aren't coming back to their hometowns, and boarded up main streets. And, there's a lot of doom and gloom out there. But, I'm here to tell you that there are towns that are taking this opportunity to reinvent themselves and find their new place in the world. And, you either change or you die. Essentially, that's what it comes down to. And so how can we tap into the strength and the knowledge of everybody from a community? Not just the people that have the most power or the most money in a community, but everyone, because everybody is worthy of telling a story and sharing their ideas and their hopes and dreams for the future.
Wow. Okay. Since on that last section there that you just spoke about, I'm going to read something to you before we get into the topic of the day, and I just want to get your view on this article that was sent to me by my friend Elaine Scott here in Garnett, the one who is really promoting Garnett Heart and Soul here. And as a matter of fact, Kansas would be another state on your map of Heart and Soul projects. But anyway, this article is by Revitalize or Die founder, Jeff Seigler. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. This is January 27th, 2021. If I just had one piece of advice to give to city leaders, it would be put the neighborhoods first. Prioritize the people. Do your absolute best to make your residents love your city so much that it hurts. Listen to them, engage them, respond to them, make them the stars of your show, lift them up so they feel like they live in the greatest city humanity has ever constructed. Your job is to win over people that already call your city home. Stop dinking around. I changed the word there. He had another word for that, so I put stop dinking around with people that don't live in your town. It's an insult to those that do. Yet other cities are out here courting your residents, which is true here in this area, while you are out there courting their residents. It's stupid to a degree that it is hard to fathom. Okay, I have several paragraphs from this article, but I'm just going to leave it to that paragraph right there. What do you say about that?
Well, first of all, Jeff and I are in the same coaching cohort through Community Heart and Soul through the Orton Foundation. So I've had a chance to visit with Jeff, and I think he's brilliant. And as somebody who's married to a Pittsburgher, because Jeff's from Pittsburgh, right? He says it like it is, and I appreciate that. I think what that tells me is, yes, I agree with him. I think that when communities do planning, comprehensive planning, visioning. They're required to do that to kind of carve out a roadmap for their future. And, as somebody who's worked in rural development for a while, I know that planning is important. And I've seen a lot of cases where consultants are hired from the outside to come in. You have a few leaders from the community that are, kind of choose the direction based on their own personal goals and motivations. And there's some time constraints there. Maybe it's grant funded. Maybe it has to fit within a fiscal year. And so chop, chop, they want to get that plan done. They want to get the roadmap built. They want to have a shiny, beautiful object, and they complete it. And then everybody else from the community grumbles about it because it's like, well, nobody asked me what I thought. And I think that's a terrible idea. And how are my tax dollars going to pay for that? And so, there's a lot of instances where plans, even though they're really well intentioned and they may have some really great elements of it, they miss something that's really important. And is that's doing the intentional work of asking the people that are directly impacted by those decisions. And the reason why those folks typically aren't asked, in my opinion, are a couple reasons. First of all, it's time consuming. I mean, Community Heart and Soul, as Garnett's getting ready to launch this, it's not going to be easy. People have to dig in. It's going to be, probably a couple years of really getting to know your neighbors, intentionally gathering their feedback and their information, and taking that and in a very scientific way and coming up with some key value statements, some key directions, and really figuring out what matters most to the entire community of Garnett. The other piece of it is a lot of people in our community are not asked to be at the table when they do this visioning and planning work. And so when a community-wide SWOT analysis, which is a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threat kind of process and sort of planner language, when they're invited to do a community input session, say, okay, we're meeting at 5:00 at City Hall, everybody come and bring your ideas. People that have not historically been asked their opinion about things may not know how to provide impact or input on it. And they typically sit very quietly because they don't want to put themselves out there. They've never been asked to engage in it. And, somebody told me once in another meeting I was in a couple weeks ago that planning is a privilege, and planning is a privilege. And folks that have not been involved with that process or allowed to have a voice don't know how to do it. And so how do you get their feedback? How do you teach them how to become invested, to not be apathetic about their town? You do that by asking them to tell their stories, which is a skill that I think we've all lost our ability to do, is to just sit down and tell stories with our neighbors. And, you can get a lot of good information that way. You can find out from the older folks in your community about what it was like growing up in town. What were things that they did for fun when they were kids? You can ask about, people's feelings about, do they live in a part of town that maybe isn't as well respected as another part of town? And what are their real feelings about that? No one's probably ever asked them. So this whole process of Community Heart and Soul is going out and intentionally collecting stories, teaching people through their own voice and their own stories about how to weigh in on the future of their town. And, that might sound kind of like, pie in the sky, but the only way to break through apathy and disengagement from people that live in a community is to create a space for them and welcome them back in to tell that information. And then to have our leadership be open to hearing it, because I think it's going to benefit everybody in the long run. It's going to make citizens more engaged and connected to one another. It's going to, I am almost going to guarantee it's going to give valuable information to the city leadership, and they can integrate that into some of their other visioning. It might even, point them in a different direction. They might hear things they've never heard before because no one's ever asked the question. So, that's the hope that Community Heart and Soul has. And then long term, what you've done is you've developed a stronger relationship with the people that live there. You become friends again. You become neighbors again. You create opportunities for the community to reconnect with one another and not be divided by streets or zip codes or Zoom or all these other barriers that we have that prevent us from knowing each other.
Jack, okay, you stumbled onto this project. It kind of fit with your job, really. Okay. Because you care about the rural community and farms. You've had background experiences there, obviously, and you want to do something to make things better across the American Union. Okay, in rural America. Okay, who funds it? I mean, I see here on my sheet, Community Heart and Soul, a project of the Orton Family Foundation. Okay. It sounds like the public needs a little information. Who are these people? Who funds this project?
So, Community Heart and Soul was started by the Orton Family Foundation, and the Orton Family Foundation is based in Vermont. Lyman Orton is the patriarch of this group. Their business is the Vermont Country Store, which is, if people haven't heard about it, that's where you can find the very best flannel granny jammies, the candy that you had when you were a kid, a lot of nostalgic, very practical things. And they have mail order too. So, it's that is actually where their money came from. And I'm sure, there's been other investments and opportunities along the way, but Lyman started this. And he started this because he was working with his own community, which was going through comprehensive planning process. They ran into some divisive issues, and the community started feeling like there was a lot of acrimony that was, coming out of the community in the planning process. And he realized how important it was to be intentional about gathering information. And so this was came out of his own personal experience. And he realized the value of creating some sort of methodical approach to making sure that community plans and visioning are inclusive and that people are given the skills to be able to become civically engaged. And so the Orton Family Foundation has, invested over the last 10 years in the Community Heart and Soul model, which is staffed by fantastic experts, people that, have academic backgrounds and how to do this best, have hands-on experience in working with rural communities. And it really has grown in the Northeast of the United States. But over the last several years, we've seen it really boom. And my colleague in Dubuque, Iowa, Jason Nisis, has been working as a Community Heart and Soul coach in Iowa, Illinois, and Wisconsin. And we have seen just an explosion of cities or towns in the Midwest want to be part of this too. So currently there's, it started in the Northeast, it's working its way across the United States. My goal is to find communities in my area, and my area is getting bigger. So I'm thinking about Kansas, that would really think that this would be a good fit for their town. And so, all credit goes back to Lyman Orton and his personal experience and his vision, and then putting his resources towards this to develop a pretty solid framework for how towns can replicate this. And it gets improved every time. With COVID, we've had to shift and pivot. So when I was originally trained on this, it was supposed to be done with me standing in front of a crowd with people, me sitting over a cup of coffee, thinking, brainstorming, and they have had to adjust a lot of the training through Zoom and virtual methods. And so that's been a challenge this last year. But I think, again, they've got really great people on staff that are way more knowledgeable about how to do that than I am. But it's been set up in such a way that I can stick my face on a monitor and hopefully talk to the folks that are 3 hours away, because this isn't about me. Community Heart and Soul is not going to fail or succeed on me. I'm just here to guide it. It's going to succeed because of the will of the people in Garnett. And that's where the work is going to happen. And that's where hopefully your future interviews are going to be, not on me, but the people that live there, because this is about what is going to be best for Garnett. How do we get our neighbors to be back involved with each other? How do we have conversations, and how do we get excited about the future together? So,
okay. Yeah. So it basically originated in Vermont and expanded out through the Northeast, and now it's come out to the Midwest. And I think I saw on the map Oregon and a few other states.
Colorado, Washington State. Yeah, there are not quite as many towns further west, but
right.
That's growing every year. And so right now, I think the push is to spread the good word and get the resources out to as many towns as possible. The resources that the Community Heart and Soul program have, so they have exercises, they have workbooks, they have a ton of materials that a town doesn't necessarily need a coach, and it's free. You can download it, you can use it. The team with the Orton Foundation and Community Heart and Soul are really responsive to questions from towns all over the place if they're exploring about, might this be a good fit for me? How can I do this? How have other towns used it? And they can connect you with other towns and other partners. And we're really developing a whole national community of practice where people are sharing their experiences, their best ideas. No ideas are original. Everything can be shared. And so, it's a tremendous benefit to communities. Community Heart and Soul is not trying to make money on this. This is something that is to the benefit of our small towns across the United States.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and get into this so people have an understanding of the process. I mean, we don't have to go into great detail, but just so we can give a broad summary of the phases and the steps that are involved in this process. I've got here on my sheet, Community Heart and Soul, a project of the Orton Family Foundation, phase 1, and it has imagine. What does that mean? What would that mean to the average person out here in Garnett, Kansas?
So in real practical terms, the first phase is basically getting your ducks in a row and imagining. So that's where we are right now. We're working to get our ducks in a row in Garnett. That means setting up a core leadership group, the group that's going to be driving the bus. Doesn't mean they're going to do all the work, but they are going to be the primary core group that will kind of determine the direction, discuss some strategies, and really kind of drive this forward. There may be people that join that group at a later date. Once they kind of find out more, there might be people that feel like, they can better serve the effort in a different way and might drop away. That's okay. But right now we're developing this core group. And that core group will do a project once we do our first phase training, which is called a community network analysis. And the community network analysis is a process where you, through conversation with each other, through thinking about who you're connected to in town, you develop this roadmap that represents everybody there. It takes stock of who lives in your community, who works there, who visits there, and it's really a way of identifying the demographic, social makeup of Garnett. And that really kind of lays the groundwork for imagining what could be, because it's really thinking about what are our hopes and dreams, what do we hope to achieve. This is really the time where you get people revved up about the idea. We can come together, we can give our talents, our time in different ways, but right now we're going to figure out who we are, and then we're going to talk about what our big ambitions are. Then it takes you into the next phase 2.
Okay.
And that is a story gathering phase, as I talked about earlier. So phase 2 is where we start. It sounds pretty easy, but you gather thick and thin data from the community. So what is thin data? Thin data, in some towns, they've strung up clotheslines at the local park and asked people to write their dreams for the community on a piece of fabric and hung it. One town they had a bunch of coasters printed and they left them at local bars and coffee shops so people could write their ideas on the back of the coaster. They didn't have to write their name on it or anything, but and so this is thin data. You create opportunities where people can kind of weigh in. It's sort of like the opinion box, where you can put your ideas in. And all of that information through the team and through volunteers, you start looking at common themes, you look at common language, common words, and the Community Heart and Soul model creates a process where you can kind of start to sift through some of that information and tabulate it. And then there's thick data, and thick data is a little bit more intentional. The team will be thinking about what questions do we want answered about our town? What is it that we want to know? And coming up with a list of questions and going out and sitting down one-on-one, or Zoom, whatever your comfort level is, and recording those conversations with some people that represent different segments of the community. And again, looking at the recording, writing, transcribing those questions and answers, and then looking at, again, common themes. And so the whole story gathering phase, part 2, is the longest phase of the process that takes the most time, with the sole intention of gathering information from everybody. But the byproduct of that is you're teaching people how to talk to their neighbors again, right? And you don't have to be a professor. You don't have to be scientific. All you have to do is go out and gather stories and gather information and then bring it back into the group. We put it into our little spreadsheet. We start looking for common themes. We do some coding and some color coding and some circling. And the more information that you can gather, the better, because then that takes you into the third phase. And that is where you start looking at all of those themes that emerged from your story gathering process. And you come up with a list of value statements that the community can feed back on. So we're going to be looking at what comes out of that story gathering process. What are some themes? They're going to bubble up to the surface pretty quick, and then it's a process of shaping the words and the language. So you come up with value statements of what matters most. So Community Heart and Soul is about engaging everyone, including everyone. It's focusing on what matters most, and it's playing the long game in terms of planning and vision, but also the long game of creating a foundation of civic engagement and neighborliness and things that will keep a community connected to one another. So then the fourth phase is planning, the way in my heart it really should be done in the first place. So it's coming up with a list of goals, activities, action steps based on the value statements that were developed through the story gathering process. And then you have a fantastic document that hopefully will be integrated into city documents, other organizations. They might embrace the same values, and you start thinking about how the different groups in the community can bring that plan to life by taking different pieces of it so that collectively the community is meeting the goals together. It's not going to be just one group that's doing it. The idea is to find, the Kiwanis might take on this project. The school might take on this project. The city might really invest in this particular one. There might be a group of new volunteers that come up that are really excited about another idea. And so it's just creating accountability with that plan within the community, communicating it out so people know what's happening and that everybody can find a place to bring their own skills and talents to it. It's not, it's not creating a plan and waiting for somebody else to fund it, make it happen, and do it for you. It is collectively together deciding what our direction is going to be and how we're collectively together going to make it happen.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So we went through phase 1 through 4 pretty quick. Yeah. You're good at that.
I've done it a couple times.
Yes. Okay. So for here in Garnett, you are classified as our coach.
I'm a coach.
Is that correct? You are the coach.
Coach.
And so you're basically the one that's consulting and doing what you're doing. Like in this interview here, you're helping us along, educating the folks that are in the leadership team that are kind of driving this project here in Garnett, Kansas, for the long term. And okay, so you have in this organization, you have coaches, you have champions, staff, trustees, partners. How do all those? What is all that about? You're kind of you're on the front lines, aren't you?
I guess I am at the front lines. I mean, and what that says is that there's a lot of backup behind me. So
okay, that's what I wondered.
I don't have all the answers, and I don't claim to have all the answers. But what I do have is an incredible national network of champions, of staff, of people that have done this and succeeded and done amazing things that have kind of, are available to say, hey, here's what we did. Or here's an activity that we tried that worked really well in our town. Or have you thought about this? Or have you considered that? And so my job as a coach is to be a cheerleader for the leadership team. Say, you guys keep the momentum going. You're doing great. Here's the roadmap, and here's how we can navigate it, and making sure that we're checking off all of the activities and the things so that we're doing the project with some fidelity, because what we've seen in 10 years is if you follow the steps, you're going to get good results. And so my job is to translate the steps with Garnett, but Garnett's going to do it in their own way. You're going to do it in a way that makes sense for Garnett. But my job is to translate the roadmaps. My job is also to deliver. Each phase has a training that corresponds to the start of each phase. So in March, we're looking at doing the kickoff phase 1 training. And this will be for those people that are interested in serving in that core leadership team.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we complete that and we start phase 2, my job will be to deliver the training for phase 2, to kind of lay the groundwork, to set expectations, to help coach what do we need to do for phase 2, and so forth and so forth. So, and then my job also is, if anybody from the community or groups want me to tell them what this is about, I'm happy to share, to do an informational thing about what is Community Heart and Soul. I watched Mark's webcast. I still don't get it. Can you come talk to our Optimist Club? Can you talk to this group from our neighborhood? I'm happy to do that. But the work is not, I'm not going to come in and do it for you. I'm going to sit back here and tell you, here's some ideas of how you might do it. I'm along for the ride. I am volunteering my time to do this. So, I'm really counting on some momentum to build in the community to really take it and run with it. But I'm here as backup. I'm Julie, the cruise director for Community Heart and Soul in Garnett.
Yeah, great position. Great position. Yeah, we do want to make that clear that she is not going to do it for us. It really does have to happen in the community, and people have to be willing to do it. Which brings me to a point. Okay, I have things that I do. I have things that I'm interested in. Okay, it's obvious. I've got a podcast. It's Verity Seeker, and I'm focused on, helping government improve. Okay, so I have an issue there, but I'm also now more focused on thinking locally and acting locally. So I've got a series of podcasts, which you're the first of that series. You're. Which I believe plays into thinking locally and acting locally, because that is really the way to solve our governmental problems. If you believe that there are problems in the government, some people don't believe that, but I do. I think we could use a little help in that area.
I think there's room for improvement. Yeah,
just a little improvement, and it's really like you said, it's really up to the people. I'm sorry, one organization, one man, one woman can't fix these problems. It really has to happen within your local community at the ground roots level, and having something like Heart and Soul and having that network, promote this and assist is really a positive force behind that project. And it starts with getting to know your neighbors. Now, I'm a keep to yourself type of guy. I've got plenty to do. I've got things on my plate. I have a business, I'm trying to, pull out of life support, because of the COVID issues. And so time is very valuable to me. So how do you get people like me to spend time coming to meetings or sitting down in front of their computer to Zoom to participate in a project like this? Because I know in talking to other people, especially in an economically depressed area, for whatever reason, they're worried more about themselves and the survival of their family.
absolutely.
How do you get people out to not be so apathetic, to come out and to participate rather than griping about, being controlled by others later? You know what I'm talking about. Okay. And I've done that too. Is there a way to do that? I mean, or do you just have to be like a supermen and women who have that ability to go out there and drag people out of their houses and have them come to meetings and speak? Is there a magic formula? I think I know the answer, but
Yeah, I don't
what do you think?
think there is. I don't think there is. I think that yeah, that's a really good question. how do you fight the apathy and people that are just trying to live, right? And I get it. I totally get it. I think that what we've seen from other community heart and soul towns is that there's a place for everyone. Some people are going to want to really go, whole hog on this, and they're going to want to like Paula has been amazing. Paula has researched this. She has put her own personal heart and soul into it, and she's committed a lot of volunteer time to get things rolling and organized. Some people that's going to be something that's really compelling for them, but there's going to be some people that say, no, I don't have time, but what I will do is I will sit for 2 hours at the booth down on the square when you have an event, and I'll collect people's feedback and stick it in the box. Or I'll bake cookies for the meeting so that you can get more people to show up because people like food, right? Gosh, I miss potlucks. Those were good times. Anyway, so
bring food into the picture.
And so, I mean, I think everybody, I think the idea is to be consistent with communication, to be intentional, to let as many people know what's going on, and keep in mind, not everybody has a data plan on their phone. Not everybody has a phone. Not everybody, you're gonna have to. Facebook is one way of communicating, but it's not reaching everybody. So part of it is thinking about how do we keep this in people's minds? How do we keep people informed about it? So that when an opportunity, big or small, comes up, they can find a place for themselves. And again, you're not going to have everybody in Garnett involved in this. And you're not going to be able to interview or collect stories from every person in Garnett. But what you can do is you can identify through this community network analysis, you can identify representatives and connectors from those different segments of the community. So you may have a part of town where people are really struggling with poverty. And I get it. When you live, I grew up with not a lot. And when you are just trying to keep the lights on, figure out how you're going to feed your kids for the week, doing something like this seems really pretty fluffy and not all that important. And I totally get it. But there might be somebody from that community that can speak on behalf of those people that are just getting by every day, and making sure that their message is integrated and valued just as much as everyone else.
Yeah, that might be a reason to get the ministerial alliance. We have a ministerial alliance, or pastors from the community, to participate in that way. They could really help a lot.
I think that would be an amazing thing to do.
Well, okay, you've communicated with our local government a little bit, right? The city of Garnett. I don't know about the county, but
not the county.
Not the county. Okay, so city of Garnett. Without going into great detail, what is the relationship between Garnett Heart and Soul? Because it is outside of government. It's not being influenced by government. How do you conduct the relationship? What is the relationship between the Garnett City Hall, the city commissioners, and Garnett Heart and Soul? Is it going to be doable, or are we going to struggle a little bit with this?
Well, and again, I mentioned every town approaches it a little bit differently. So in the case of Garnett, this is really moving forward without any resources. We don't have any funding in place, which typically a community heart and soul town will identify some funding resources. The city might play a pretty weighty role because they see the value of it informing their strategic direction or comprehensive planning. In some towns, you have maybe the chamber or the economic development folks more heavily engaged and involved with it. But it's not the case in every town. There's towns where it has been entirely grassroots and it has thrived and done just fine. And I think that's where Garnett is right now. I think that there is a group of citizens that would like to have a bigger voice, and they would like their neighbors to have a bigger voice. And so where we are right now is this is not political, it's not partisan, it is just residents of Garnett that want to be part of dreaming for the future of the town, and they see the value of being connected to one another. And so in the case of Garnett, this is a citizens-led project. Now, I will say that my hope and my dream is that there will be a way for the city leadership to be integrated into this. And they are supportive. I mean, a resolution has been passed that the city is supportive of the effort, which is great.
Yep.
But I think, as we move forward, I would love to see a partnership, because there's going to be some ideas that come out of this process that are going to need some city buy-in. They just are. And so, my hope is that we can have a spirit of positivity and collaboration, and that there is value in a broader contingent of the community being involved in that process. And I think the city's going to see that. I think they're going to see the value in it, and make for a stronger direction for everyone. But for right now, this is Garnett's plan. It's starting with the citizens. It's a citizens-led effort. It is not anti-city. It's just that the city is going in a different direction right now, but I think there's going to be some crossover on what this group is doing and what the city is doing for its visioning and planning too. And again, it's going to depend on how the leadership in Garnett wants that to roll out. My advice as somebody from the outside is that I think having a strong public-private partnership is a good thing. And I would hope that that's something that materializes down the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I actually don't think of this as a public-private partnership. If the because I have a personal problem with public-private partnerships with government, but thinking of this organization, if all people within the city of Garnett are being represented by Garnett Heart and Soul, working through the commissioners on behalf as a representative government of the people, I don't see an issue in that. If we were to leave certain sectors of the community out of this, which doesn't, it's in conflict with Heart and Soul as far as my research is concerned. I just don't see it as a problem if it's done properly. So the goal in the first phase is to get as many people in the community involved as possible, is what basically the goal is for Heart and Soul. That way, if you're working through government or participating on this project with government, I don't see it as a public-private partnership, because everyone is involved and they are here to serve us. So
that's true. That's true.
That, the public-private partnership thing kind of scares people a little bit because of businesses being in partnership with government. I think people have a problem with that. So in a sense, what I'm saying as it pertains to corporations, it's wrong. But in this sense, I don't see a problem with it. I just quickly, I want to go through here and just name some of the states that have been influenced by the Orton Foundation through this project. Washington State, Idaho, Montana, Colorado, Nebraska, Texas, Iowa, Michigan, Illinois, Ohio, Georgia, South Carolina, Virginia, Pennsylvania, many cities and towns in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, and I've got Kansas here, but Garnett would actually be the ground zero for this project if it succeeds.
Kansas.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've more or less covered everything, in basic terms. I do want to mention that we have, you talked about the plan book. I went ahead and printed this thing out and put it in, bound it. It says Getting Started with Community Heart and Soul, a community workbook. That's the workbook that you were talking about. I downloaded that and have put it together. I haven't gone through the whole thing yet, but it looks really promising. And I hope that it will become a success here in Garnett. And I know it's a long-term issue, but we appreciate your help in this. Are there any last words? I think we're getting close to the end here. No time limit, but do you have any final words that you'd like to say about the project or anything else?
Well, I think in the end, this project and the organization that Garnett develops is going to be unique for Garnett, and that's what's going to make it strong. It's going to be based on the assets, the strengths that you already have there, and the direction that the community wants to take it. And it might be inspired by some strategies other towns have used, but in the end, this is going to be your own, and it's going to be uniquely yours. And however that looks, I'm just so excited to see what it's going to be. I would be remiss if this is the thing I needed to fit in here since you're in Kansas. So here's my analogy. So, the Wizard of Oz, right? I hated the Wizard of Oz as a child. I hated the freaky flying monkeys. But
Scary.
Here's the analogy, right? So Community Heart and Soul is like Dorothy, right? And our communities are like Dorothy, and they're trying to get to Emerald City. They want the wizard to just magically throw a lever and solve all their problems, get them back home, and do it for them. And what did the good witch say at the end? Dorothy had the ruby slippers. She had the power all along, right? Small towns have the power. They just need to recognize it, and they need to realize that there's power in numbers. There's power in talking to each other, and that I think people are going to find they have a lot more in common and a lot more vision for the future than not. And there's nothing a town can't do once they realize that they have that power already. So that's the thing that I'm hoping to see happen with Garnett Community Heart and Soul and growing Garnett, because I've met some terrific people already, yourself included, that are coming from this, and I know that you love your town. And I'm just so excited to see how it's going to be uniquely shaped and what direction it's going to take.
Okay. Wow. I like the analogy of the Wizard of Oz.
The wizard is not going to solve your problems for you.
That's right.
That's right. Do it.
Yeah. Very good. Now, are you expecting to come down to Garnett, Kansas in the future? Is there a date set for that?
Well, we haven't set a date. So I think right now we're planning the phase 1 training in 2 sections where I'm going to be remotely a big giant head on a screen.
Okay.
But I would really, at some point, I would love to come down there and visit and see all the things up close and personal I've seen photographs of. I am getting the weekly newspaper, thanks to Paula, which is really great. I get to see what's happening in town. It gives me a little bit better sense of what people are thinking and what's going on. But yes, I would love to come down, and maybe phase 2 will be the time to do that, because that's when we're gonna dig into really connecting with our neighbors. And I have a feeling so much work's already been done that we're going to launch into phase 2 before you know it. So that might happen this summer or spring. We'll see.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on
you guys. I have high hopes.
Depends on the people like me who are in there right now, finding time to get involved like we should. So I'm hopeful that can be done. Well, Michelle, I really appreciate you coming on and doing this interview, and I hope we covered most everything that people might be interested in hearing about. Like you said, if there are any questions, they can always contact you, or have a Zoom meeting and ask questions, or they can come to our first meeting in March. I believe that's when it is.
They could, yes.
Which we will promote. So thank you very much, and we appreciate all the volunteer work that you're doing right now.
Well, and I would say, I would encourage your viewers, go to communityheartandsoul.org if you have the means to do that. There's a lot of good information, a lot of stuff that you can download for yourself, and it's free for you to use. So, I think the more information you have, the more power you've got to move things forward.
Okay, great. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for viewing this podcast today with Michelle. This is Verity Seeker signing off.